What is up, Teachers on Fire Nation? How are you? My name is Tim Cavey. I'm the host of the Teachers on Fire podcast, and today I've decided to finally do something I've dreamt about doing, and that is to record my entire editing and publishing process for an episode of the Teachers on Fire podcast. So come along with me as we edit and publish an episode. This might take a while, and you might want to skip through some certain parts of this, but I think if you are an education podcaster, you might be very interested to see this. If you are another kind of podcaster, you might find this insightful. And if you're a listener and you're just a podcast nerd, you might find this interesting as well. So come along for the ride and let's get started. Here we go. So I am going to start this little dance by opening Adobe Audition. Why did I just call it a dance? I don't know. I'm nervous. I'm being recorded. Okay, your system's audio hardware settings have changed. Yes. So what I've decided to do is just let the output noise, the sound, play through the speakers, and that way you're going to hear the sound of the podcast material, the content, right through the microphone. So it's going to play from my computer into the microphone. So you'll be able to follow along as I go. Now, my very first step in Adobe Audition is to open a multi-track, and I need to be very intentional about where I save it. So I'm going to back up. Now, that's an unfair advantage. I already had that set up, but I'm still new to sort of mapping my MacBook. This is a newer MacBook, and I'm not entirely sold on it yet, but here we go. We've got audio files, Teachers on Fire, and I know that I'm going to want to save it in my folder for episode 142 with Dr. Anne-Marie Thomas. She's going to be my guest for this episode. So I'm going to title the session with the same name. And notice this is not the final edition of the audio file. This is not what I'm going to be publishing. This is the Adobe Audition file, which is, configured much differently. My very first step here in this first track is going to be to import some nice music, and I've collected some audio files from the YouTube audio library. So let's go on over there. Audio files, song tracks from YouTube, and I've been opening with this track, Sunrise Drive. Can't remember the name of the group, but I do cite them and give them credit on all my show notes and materials. So let's drag them in here. It always tells me this message that the sample rate is a little bit different, and then it sort of figures that out. I'm going to increase the height of the track so that I can see, a little more detail here. And I always lower the volume on the music track by 17. And I've played with different numbers here. I've gone to 15, 19. Right now I'm kind of at a sweet spot of 17. Okay, so I'll give you a sense of what that sounds like. Okay, and that is, I'll take you to a couple of places here. That is the YouTube audio library. And somebody online, I wish I could give them credit, somebody gave me this idea. These songs are all free music, public domain, Creative Commons. I'm not sure, to be honest, of the exact classification, but as near as I can tell, these artists are fine with sharing their work with certainly the YouTube community, and my sense is that as long as I am attributing their work properly, then they will be fine with me using their content as well. And by the way, I do publish my podcasts on my YouTube channel, and so this content does end up on YouTube. So I think YouTube will be okay with me doing that. Certainly hope so. YouTube, call me up and let's talk if that's a problem. So that's where I get my YouTube audio clips, and you can obviously arrange or sort by mood. I often go to hip hop. Did I say mood or genre? I go to hip hop and then different moods, and you can explore that. Easy download button over here. And then right here, let's take a look at what Zencastr looks like. So Zencastr, talk to different podcasters. A lot have gone in the direction of Squadcast. A lot of the podcasters that I work with. I am still loyal to Zencastr. it's done pretty well. It hasn't been 100%, but it's done pretty well. Here's my interview with Anne-Marie Thomas. You can see those waveforms show that the recording is still, or the audio input is still live here. And so in other words, if I hit new recording, I could still add more recordings to this. But these are the files from my session with her. Zencastr records a file or two files on my end. You can see a WAV file and an MP3, and the same thing on her end. And then it imports from her computer after the interview. Excuse me. So I have already downloaded these 4 files, and you'll see those in a moment. So let's close that up and go back into Adobe Audition. And here I'm going to import, do I need to click that again? Import my audio files, the ones I just showed you. So they've already been saved. I've learned to just, whenever I can, just save them right away after the interview, make sure there are no problems. And I misspelled her name here in the in Zencastr. That's unfortunate. Apologies, Dr. Anne-Marie Thomas. So notice that I chose the track. I did that too fast, but I chose the track that ends with "on fire," and that's sort of a signal to me that that is me talking. Now I'm getting a little too excited. I've overlooked one important piece, and that is my intro. And my intro badly needs to be updated, but right now it's saved in my, don't ask me why, but it's saved in my, is it in my documents? Where is it? See, this is very real, folks. This is very, very real. It's not there. I think it's in my, is it in my downloads? Yeah. See, sometimes I get into certain positions in my MacBook and I can't seem to access all of the folders, so I have to make these other folders in my downloads folder. It's, you know, I need help. So here we go. I've got my old intro. You'll hear that in a moment. And there was a little bit of blank space at the beginning. I'm just going to cut that down. And here's kind of what this sounds like. If you listen to the podcast, you'll recognize this.
Welcome to the Teachers on Fire podcast, where I profile agents of growth and transformation in education today. Each guest shares their hot. You can also follow the show at Gas. I'm your host, Tim Cavey. Let's meet today's guest.
Now notice this music keeps on running here. And I don't want to cut it off or fade it out just yet because I like to sort of introduce the guest and mention her name and then maybe get into my preview of her just a little bit before I fade that music out. So I'll jump that music back here and maybe we'll put the red line. I'm sure there's a better name than red line. See, I'm not a professional. I'm not Dan Kreiness or Jeff Bradbury or some of these other people with extensive audio professionalism. Expertise. Okay, I'm just going to stop. Let's pull up my file that I showed you earlier. Where is it? There we go. Teachers on Fire. Now, something you'll see right away while this converts the bitrate or whatever this is doing. Something you'll see right away is that there's a ton of small talk here at the beginning. I'll give you a sense of what that sounds like.
As good as can be expected under these circumstances, right? Stuck inside, but there are some silver linings too.
And the reason why there's always some small talk at the beginning is because once I have a guest on Zencastr, I want to get a good sense of, first of all, the sound quality. So I like things to be rolling for a couple of minutes before we actually start into the interview. So I'm confirming sound quality on both ends. Hopefully the waveforms look good. And I've also learned that you really need to hit record sooner than later, because if you leave it too late and you forget, that is fatal. And Kelly Croy from the Wired Educator podcast has a great story of having a megastar, Pat Flynn, on his show. And, well, I mean, he's a megastar as far as I'm concerned. And he forgot to hit record. Oof, that's going to sound weird. So I'll finish the story. He forgot to hit record. They were minutes into the interview, I don't know how long, and Kelly had to sheepishly admit to Pat that, yes, he had forgotten to hit record, and he had to apologize and restart the interview. So thank you, Kelly, for sharing that story, and that story has scared me. I don't think I've ever completely... I'm just going to mute my computer volume here. I don't think I've ever completely forgotten to hit record with one of my own guests, but there have been some other problems, and it's scared me enough that I've made that commitment to always just hit record early. That's just a good practice to be in. Now, I did take a look at this clip earlier. I will admit a little bit of advanced scouting, and I'm pretty sure I don't really launch into the formal interview portion until about the 6-minute mark. There we go. So let's just check in. I'm going to unmute my computer, and yeah, let's see where we are here.
Of course. Yeah.
Still more small talk.
It was inside, I'll get it wrong, but inside Bill's brain? Or I think so. I mean, prize or just what is going on there? All right. So let's, do you go by Ann for short, by the way? Today I'm speaking with any sort of promote. Oh, and always Anne Marie. Okay, totally fair.
Now, did you hear what I just did there? I've learned as well, and I sometimes I forget to do this, but I've learned as often as you can, just confirm with the guest before you launch into the conversation. Just confirm that you have the pronunciation of their name correct, because there's nothing like getting, a paragraph or two in and the guest having to cut you off because you're saying their name incorrectly. That's happened to me before. Or worse, they just let it go, and then all of their fans and followers listen to your episode and sort of groan at the fact that you are butchering their names. So don't make that mistake. All right, I think right here, I'll just confirm one more time. I think that's the beginning of my interview.
Today, I'm speaking with Dr. Anne Marie Thomas.
All right, that's the beginning. So I'm going to make a cut right here. Select this piece, and then powerful feature in Adobe Audition, just hit Shift Backspace. And what that's going to do is pull the clip right back to where it should be, back to that red line. And this is what it sounds like at this point.
Listen to the podcast. I'm your host, Tim Cavey. Let's meet today's guest. Today, I'm speaking with Dr. Anne Marie Thomas. Anne Marie is the director of the Playful Learning Lab.
Right about there is probably where I will fade out the music track. So I'm going to delete that piece and just fade it out by using this little tool here. So this is what that sounds like.
Subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm your host, Tim Cavey. Let's meet today's guest. Today, I'm speaking with Dr. Anne Marie Thomas. Anne Marie is the director of the Playful Learning Lab, creator of Squishy Circuits, author of Making Makers, OK Go Sandbox, and a professor. Oh, you know what? I messed that up. What can we put there? What can we put there about OK?
Okay, look at that.
Today, I'm speaking with Dr. Anne Marie Thomas. OK Go Sandbox, or just go. Okay, all right. Okay, take two.
So just to catch you up, if you missed that, I started into my intro and then I made some mistakes or I was uncertain. And so I just stopped and I said, I'm going to clarify with my guest before I continue. So this is going to be a take two. That's probably some research I should have done. I mean, obviously I had the introduction prepped, but there was something there that I didn't get quite right. And so I thought better safe. I'd rather be safe and clarify with the guest and get that right. So here we go, take two.
Today I'm speaking with Dr. Anne Marie Thomas. Anne Marie is the director of the Playful Learning Lab, creator of Squishy Circuits, author of Making Makers, co-founder of OK Go Sandbox, and a professor of engineering and entrepreneurship at the University of St. Thomas. Anne Marie is also the 2020 recipient of the International Lego Prize. Very exciting. Follow Dr. Anne Marie on Twitter at AMPTMN and visit her website at annemarie-thomas.com. Anne Marie, thank you so much for coming on.
Sometimes I have these awkward pauses. I'm just going to shorten that up a little bit. Shift backspace. So let's just listen to that.
Visit her website at annemarie-thomas.com. Anne Marie, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Are you ready to talk about learning? Why don't you
Now, normally I say in my intro, are you ready to talk education? I don't know why I changed that up, but whatever. You know, sometimes I just throw in, I can't control what comes out of my mouth is maybe the point there. Okay, so let's get the file of Dr. Anne-Marie Thomas. This is sort of the other side of the interview. And if I can find my way, so Tim, audio files, Teachers on Fire, 142. Anne-Marie Thomas. See how it ends in annemariethomas.wave. So we're going to open that file. And yeah, this is the one I want. So right at the red line is where I left off. Now I'm going to mute my voice here for a moment because my job right now is going to be to find the beginning of her, or essentially find her answer. So I say, are you ready to talk about learning? And I want to start right at the point where she answers that question. So that's going to be, I'll mute this as well because I have to skip forward, right? That's going to be at about, let's do some math here, at about the 8-minute mark. And I can use the slider up here at the top to go a little bit faster. Let's see. Now, watching the guest conversation here on the bottom, that doesn't look like I'm quite at the... I'm going to unmute that track. I don't think we're there yet. Let's see.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, that was a complete blunder, because guess what? That was my own voice, so that was not the right track. Let's try that whole thing again. So here is where I want to, sorry about that. That was a waste. Okay, Anne-Marie Thomas, there it is. Why did I grab the other one? This is not making a, see, this is not going to be a perfect demo, but that's okay, right? This is real life. And that was my goal here in making this track, in this YouTube recording. I'm not going to call it a tutorial because you know what? It's not pro enough for that, but let's move me over here for now, or maybe down here. I don't use this window all that much. So, okay, let's try that again. I'm going to use the slider again, and I want to move up to about the 8-minute mark. What I'm looking for, the telltale sign will be a short little burst of text. It might be that, where she says, yes, I'm happy to be here, or something.
Yeah, we have no offices, but we picked the house.
Nope.
It's too... no, Anne-Marie.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
That might have been her beginning.
It was Anne-Marie. Yeah. It's not a big deal.
I don't think we're quite there yet. Yeah, we haven't started yet.
Yeah. No, you got it. Because OK Go is the band and Sandbox is their playground.
Okay, so that's where I did my first take of the intro, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be where she says...
Absolutely.
Okay, so that is where her part of the interview really begins. So I'm going to hit Shift Backspace. And if you've been a little, if this has felt a little slow so far, it is slow. It's slow to get started, but now we're off and rolling because we've got our 2 tracks, top and bottom, and they are now synced. And you're going to see how I slice and dice here. So I'll let you listen to what we've got right here.
Anne-Marie, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Are you ready to talk about learning?
Absolutely.
Now I'm noticing her track is a little quiet. There are 2 ways I can bump that up. One, I can double click it and ramp it up like this in the waveforms area. I used to do that a lot more. I'm not a big fan of doing that anymore. I'd rather use the Match Clip Loudness feature. So what I'm going to do here is move this track to -19. Now again, I'm not a sound expert. I don't actually know in terms of industry standards if that's where I should be, but that should make her track a little louder and start to match mine. And I'll do all the matching at the very end to make sure everything, all the levels are approximately similar. What I'm going for here is I don't want our voices to have a big difference in volume. All right, so let's see what that sounds like.
Show today. Are you ready to talk about learning?
Absolutely.
Why don't you start by telling us a little bit more?
Okay, so we've got her answered. Now, I know I'm rare in this, but what I generally do is I don't like both tracks running at the same time. I like to keep it, whoever's doing the speaking has the running track and very, very little overlap. I left in this little speck here because that's a bit of a chuckle on my part, but for the most part, I like to delete whoever's not talking just to make sure there is absolutely no noise on the other track. So let's listen to what that sounds like.
Absolutely.
Why don't you start by telling us a little bit more about your current context in education? I shared a pretty diverse portfolio right there, and I'm sure there's more to it. So what does that look like for you on a daily basis?
Okay, so here's what I mean. I'm going to hold down the shift key and single left click there. That makes a vertical line through both tracks. And there was some noise. Do you see this noise here? There was some noise from her. In fact, let's see if we can hear what that sounds like. I'm just going to delete it. But this is the kind of noise I don't want in the other track. Let's listen. Okay, so there's some laughing. And the second one, I don't know if you can hear it. I'm going to max my computer volume. See if you can hear this. Okay, it's just breathy. And we all do this, but listen. Did you hear that? So it just doesn't sound great on a podcast. I mean, it's very natural in a conversation. It would be fine. But in a podcast, I'm going to delete a lot of that out. So do you see that by deleting that bottom track, I got rid of that background noise, and now it's going to be a little more pure and clean.
Much for coming on the show today. Are you ready to talk about learning?
Absolutely.
Why don't you start by telling us a little bit more about your current context in education? I shared a pretty diverse portfolio right there, and I'm sure there's more to it. So what does that look like for you on a daily basis?
I am fortunate that I get to wear many different hats, but I am
Now, one thing I don't like, as my voice cracks, one thing I don't like is that her bars right here max out. There's a different term for that. They are maxing out, and that's not going to be nice sound. And I'm talking about these places where they hit the roof. And I'm wondering if I should not have increased the volume to -19. So if I want, I can, let me just scan down the rest of the track here and take a look at what that looks like. Because what I don't want is a lot of those waveforms hitting the roof. They should not be maxing like that. Okay, actually, you know what? It looks pretty good. Looks pretty healthy. Okay, so it's just, she's just got some enthusiasm or whatever at the very beginning. And so I can actually, yeah, it might be okay. Let's go with that. So I'm going to back up here. I won't play with the volume levels
portfolio
anymore.
right there, and I'm sure there's more to it. So what does that look like for you on a daily basis?
I am fortunate that I get to wear many different hats, but I am, first and foremost, after being a mom, I am a professor at the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota in the United States, where I hold appointments in both the School of Business and the School of Engineering. However, these days, my teaching is split between...
I'm just going to pause for a second to tell you what I'm doing. So this will start to speed up, but what I am doing with the cuts, the slices, they're not going to affect the sound whatsoever, but I'm going to keep making cuts as I go through the clip. Because what I want to do is create a backup point. So if I want to do any editing or I want to hear the last 10 seconds again, I've just found from experience it's really helpful to have that cut to jump back to. And again, audio technicians might have a better way of doing this, but as I go, you're going to see me skip forward to the next cut. And I like to hear a little bit. There are podcasters who will really just look at the waveforms and they will go through and edit in maybe 5 or 10 minutes by just looking at the waveforms. I like to hear it a little bit because occasionally a guest will get lost in their thoughts, or they will want to do a retake, or they'll make a bad mistake, and it actually will be better for the listener if you just back up and cut that out. So I like to keep an ear open for that, but I will start jumping forward a lot faster, Right now, we're only at the minute 47 mark. I promise it'll get a lot faster. Here we go.
Engineering, business, and education. Because I get the Playful Learning Lab then is the research team that I run at the university, which has about 25 researchers. Unusual for a university lab, though, is I was called a combination of K-12 education, art, and technology, looking at how we can make things playful in learning settings and come up with unusual collaborations. It's been a big part.
One more time. I won't announce this every time, but did you notice I just cut out the track? She is doing the talking there on the bottom. We don't need the audio from me at the top at all. So that's why I just cut that out. And again, that's because any noise that I'm making is not going to be helpful to the listener. All I want the listener to hear is my guest. Now, I've had some playful discussions with my friend Jeffrey Frieden, who's also an edu-podcaster. How tight, I'll show you what I mean. How tight do I make this clip? I can pull my words right up tight to the end of my guest. I'll show you what that sounds like. Or I can leave more of a relaxed pause, which I will undo and then show you after this.
Surprises to the learning process.
Well, and I think in recent years,
you know what? That actually kind of sounded natural, so I might leave that like that. What I'm doing there is I'm just snipping out empty space just to keep the conversation flowing. Let's listen one more time to make sure.
Designers and chefs to bring some unexpected surprises to the learning process.
Well, and I think in recent years, there's been an increasing in that area. I mean, I think of all the K-5 learners across the continent, across the world, really. Well, let's continue a little bit with your work at the Playful Learning Lab. So you talked about your team. What is the mission and vision there? What is, I guess, the overall purpose and where is that work going?
So the Playful Learning Lab.
So part of the reason for that gap that you see between my speaking and her speaking is there may have been a delay on the Zencastr connection. Sometimes that happens too if there's a 1 second delay. So again, it'll just flow a little bit better. You saw me, I'll undo for a second. Control Z. See, there was that gap there at the beginning. I'm just going to snip the end off. Some people don't like that, but I like it to just flow a little tighter. So here's what that exchange sounds like.
The mission and vision there. What is, I guess, the overall purpose and where is that work going?
Sure. So the Playful Learning Lab, as any engineering professor anywhere, I started realizing that the projects I was cohesive line. What was the link that held them together? And I realized that they were.
Now up here you can see some, I say something. And so often I would just delete that because that's not going to add anything to the conversation, or especially if it's a laugh, like an ugly laugh. I'll just cut that right out. But let's take a listen and just see what that sounds like and see if it's worth keeping. So listen for my voice here on the top track.
In a safe way for her that would still be fun and something.
It's just a chuckle. So I might just get rid of that.
She could do while I was like cooking dinner. And this is when the maker movement was really taking off, and soldering was not an option, and thinking it was just a little side thing for us to use with the schools that we worked with. And it really grew to the point that it is now used around the world. It's a company. I gave the IP away to my students, so they have or how do you look at music videos? If you're familiar with the rock band OK, and explains the concepts behind things like reaction machines they built for a music video, and challenges kids and teachers, or in these current days, families at home, to dive into some hands-on, but also to train my young researchers, again, these undergraduates, in thinking and working this way on what does it mean to help Blue Origin, to ask what does it mean to have playful STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math, specifically designed for deaf children. So that's been a big focus of accessibility for the lab. And kind of our fun one that we hope this day comes again is that we're also in resident.
I have to say, as I listen to her speak, she's a great guest. You hear a lot of volume, enthusiasm, and she's speaking quickly. So this is going to be a good episode, I can tell already. It's going to be fun to listen to. Now let's listen to the exchange. And sometimes I'll decide, if I stumble a bit in my words, I might trim that off. Let's listen to what it sounds like right now before I do any trimming.
True of so many of us right now. There's a little bit of uncertainty about when we'll be able to get back into those classrooms or back onto those museum floors.
Right. That is fascinating work. So many different directions.
A little bit of uncertainty about when we'll be able to get back into those classrooms or back onto those museum floors.
Right. That is fascinating work. So many different directions that you're going with it. So many incredible apps.
So you saw what I did there. I just cut out one right just to sort of keep that moving a little bit better. Just a quick snip.
Applications, just fascinating. Well, let's keep that going, keep that theme going, because in response to the closure that you just mentioned, you recently co-created the Playline Resource Guide. And I know teachers, in some cases, maybe feel overwhelmed by the amount of resources out there, but this one I think will be of particular interest. It provides play-based activities and hosts. Can you tell us a little bit more about the thinking behind this resource? Who are you aiming at? And what can educators expect to gain when they visit the playline.net?
Yeah, so the Playline.
Can educators expect to gain?
Did you hear me stumble a little bit? So I obviously had to look at my doc or something because I wanted to make sure I got the URL right. So I'll just cut out that empty space and let's see if that sounds natural as I go from here.
Behind this resource, who are you aiming at? And what can educators expect to gain when they visit behind this resource? Who are you aiming at? And what can
Now, I also noticed right there that I stuttered. I said "and" twice. And just for I don't always take this out, but just for fun, let's edit that out and I'll show you what that looks like. Watch this.
Yeah. And what can I...
Okay, so let's make a cut from here to here. Okay, and you should just hear one quick "and." Let's see what that sounds like.
Thinking behind this resource, who are you aiming at? And what can educators expect to gain when they visit the playline.net?
All right, that sounds a little better. So no stumbles, no stutters. I just cleaned up my speech and made myself sound just a little bit smarter. Actually stumble a lot. So there's a big gap there because of those cuts I made on the top track. And we'll tighten that up. Here's what the exchange sounds like.
It's the playline.net.
Yeah, so the Playline is led by myself and Carly Sirachi, who is a children's TV host in the U.S. She and I met at a conference on play a few weeks ago in Denmark. And we realized when this started unfolding and schools were closing that, as you mentioned, community is really important. And we now have educators literally around the world in this unprecedented situation or preparation to be suddenly moving their classes online, trying to figure out how to connect with their kids, how to make it meaningful, how to still cover content, but also be supportive of their students at a trying time. And maybe to quote airline attendants, we have to put our own air masks on first. So what we realized was, how do we help teachers, and how do we connect teachers to each other during this time? And they're open to any educators. They're open to anyone. So we started that last month, and what's been really surprising is just getting the word out through social media and through friends, educators at a time on this. But we've had teachers from about 6 different countries, and it truly is. Carly and I joke that we are not qualified to lead a helpline exactly at 30 minutes, but everyone, including all of you listeners, are welcome to join these. And we start with a deep breath, because we all have, or just like you said, I'm a preschool teacher. What does it mean to be online with 3-year-olds? Can I even do that? And none of us would ever claim to have all of the knowledge. But when you have a community of 10, 15, 20 other educators who are passionate about teaching and their students and education, it's surprising how much you can crowdsource. And so there's been a flurry of people sending resources back and forth and helping point people.
Okay, you can see me listening to the conversation and sort of skipping through it. My mouse is doing some funny things, so I think it might be low on battery. So I'm going to use the trackpad here for a few minutes. Again, I'm listening to the conversation. I'm sort of jumping in and out. I'm making cuts and jumping forward. She speaks really well, so I'm not too worried about any slip-ups or problems that I need to edit out. And let's get to the end of her comments.
The thought of teaching online. So it is a little bit of support group, but in this time, it helps all of us. We're no longer going into our offices and seeing colleagues. It's sort of lovely to have a chance to have a cup of coffee with other people going through things quite similar to what you're going through.
You mentioned the term crowdsource, and that was exactly what was in my mind. I think if there was ever a time to crowdsource solutions together, it is now. And I love that you're offering these sessions 12 hours apart. I mean, you're catching every available time zone across the planet. What an amazing phenomenon. Now, are you archiving these videos on YouTube? What an amazing phenomenon.
Now, I was a little bit clumsy there. You know, that's not something you have to edit, but again, just out of interest, partly because you're watching this right now, I'll show you sort of what an edit looks like right there. Let's listen again.
Planet, what an amazing phenomenon. Now, are you archiving these videos?
Now, I said and I did an ugly sort of lip smack, which I'm probably doing right now, but let's get that out. Okay, cut that out, and let's listen again.
Planet, what an amazing phenomenon. Now, are you archiving these videos on YouTube or on the website?
We are not. So
Okay.
we made a very purposeful decision that we are...
Planet, what an amazing...
Now, notice I could tighten that up here, and maybe I will. It's not necessary because there was kind of a nice, pleasant gap between us, but I'll just trim it down a little bit.
Planet, what an amazing phenomenon. Now, are you archiving these videos on YouTube or on the website?
We are not. So we made a very purposeful decision that we are not going to record any of these, though you have the option of giving your email address, and then one of my awesome research students sends out everyone to share their email. I mentioned I've got a very large research team that's used to working in all of these public spaces, and so those amazing students are currently in their own apartments or homes. But in the meantime, we also, as part of Playline, have been offering one-on-one help for any educator that reaches out to us. So we've had people... So we've written Zoom guides for educators that we've been sending out. We've had some electrical engineering students help figure out how to do a demo online instead of in person, all sharing notes. And I think one of the coolest thing about this is that it is uniform right now. The concerns that a teacher in Australia might have about how do I help my students that don't have Angeles. So there is something about that shared humanity, and you know, it's a really uncertain. I hope we're doing a service for more peace.
So cool.
Paul's has been doing quite a service for me. I leave with just a little bit more peace.
So cool. Well, Anne-Marie, we also need to touch on your receipt of the...
Okay, so that was a good segment. I'm going to put a double vertical bar there and a bit of a gap between sort of my next words, but that's okay.
Just a little bit more peace.
So cool. Well, Anne-Marie, we also need to touch on your receipt of the... How did you earn it? And tell us more about the work that LEGO is doing in this area.
Yeah, so I don't think anyone can ever earn such a thing. I would be lying if I said I didn't burst into tears when they called me a few weeks ago. And the prize... yeah, so I don't think anyone can ever earn such a thing.
Now, there's some loud furniture noise, and I'm hoping it's on my end because I can easily cut that. But I think it might be on her end. Let's listen for that.
Yeah, so I don't think anyone can ever earn such a thing.
Yeah, it's on her end. So that sound is going to stay. I don't know if you can hear it through my computer speakers, but she, moved her chair or her desk or something, and that created that background sound. But here we go. One more. I'll back it up a little bit, and then I'll just let it run.
And tell us more about the work that LEGO is doing in this area.
Yeah, so I don't think anyone can ever earn such a thing. I would be lying if I said I didn't burst into tears when they called me a few weeks ago. And the prize really is for people who are working in the area of learning through play. And for us, and then the other is on this area of playful STEAM that has 40% refugee families. The children are deaf and refugees to this country. They also have the largest number. And when we talk about deaf children and learning, you often hear a lot about language acquisition. But what we've been looking at is how do we do things like mathematics when you usually are working with maker or creative space activities, to settings like that. So we just got the prize a few weeks ago and we are gearing up pretty hard right now. And you mentioned, what is LEGO's role in this? Well, the neat thing about LEGO that I've learned is that they have the foundation. They are a nonprofit and they support educators and playful learning in classroom and parents. We had something in mind for museums and deaf families, but now we get to have the funding to help them work what is turning out to be an unprecedented difficult time for all education. to have the funding to help.
That is my wife on the phone. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Got the phone call taken care of. Here's where we're at right now.
But for us, the timing is also just so time for all education.
I don't know why that is muted.
To me,
but now we get to have the funding to help them at what is turning out to be an unprecedented, difficult time for all education.
Absolutely. Well, that is something still new to me, and I'm learning more, and I only get more and more impressed by the work that Lego is doing. The pro about just simply improving PR or sales. Congratulations. Phenomenal.
Thank you so much.
Phenomenal outcome for you and for your team.
Now, here's a rare exception where it's good to hear the guest because I'm congratulating her and she says, thank you so much. So we're going to leave that piece in. So there's a rare overlap where both tracks are running at the same time. So let's listen to what that sounds like.
Through play. So again, congratulations. Phenomenal.
Thank you so much.
Phenomenal outcome for you and for your team. As you look across your professional learning network, you talked about that global community and, of course, your own practice. What else is setting you on fire about education and learning today?
Thank you so much.
Phenomenal.
I'm just going to listen to this gap here because it sounds a little bit awkward and I might tighten that up a little bit. Let's see.
Phenomenal outcome for you and for your team. As you look across your professional learning network, you talked about that outcome for you and for...
All right, so I think it's going to sound better if I just cut out that piece right there. And let's tighten that up a little bit. Okay, so let's listen to this sequence here. Most of the attention I put in... Most of the attention I give the podcast is the exchanges, right, between the host and the guest.
You and for your team. As you look across your professional learning network, you talked about that global community and, of course, your own practice. What else is setting you on fire about education and learning today?
You know, honestly, it's seeing among educators around the world. I think if you had asked me this question, the way that teachers have been reaching out to support each other, to see whole education communities supporting each other. A huge appreciation for the work of Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers. And in fact, when students graduate and really looking at us as educators and saying, well, how can we be the helpers? Online, with a broken camera if they have, but they're doing it. And to me, that is something that gives me great optimism and hope.
Great answer. I love it. I'm right there with you. And my hackers, especially who...
and to me, that is something that gives me great optimism and hope.
Great answer. I love it. I'm right there with you. And my hat goes off to those teachers, especially who have 3 or 4 little people at home. I mean, they've got double duty in these next few weeks. And I think resilient is it. Who have 3 or 4 little people at home. I mean, they've got double duty in these next few weeks. And I think resilient is a great word. There's a lot of anxiety for sure. We'll acknowledge that. But I think overall, the sense that I'm getting from the education community is that resilience. And it's going to be a learning experience, I think, for all of us. Well, Anne-Marie, let's go back to your work and talk about how you are seeking to grow professionally. Is there a specific goal or maybe a project that you're currently working on or maybe obsessing about a little bit?
I have 2 that seem tangential, but one thing I've learned throughout
that you're currently working on or maybe obsessing about a little bit.
I have 2 that seem tangential, but one thing something that you end up doing. So one, passion projects or seem tangential shockingly always end up being like the crucial element in something that you end up doing. So one is that I was the kid in a lot of online classes. I have 2 that seem tandential, but...
So here you'll hear me say, right. And sometimes I think, I mean, this is my own feel, but sometimes it's kind of nice. It humanizes the conversation to drop that in and keep that, even though I said most of the time I like to, you can see her talking here in the bottom track. Most of the time I'll just delete everything on my track. But in this case, I'm just going to include that and I'm going to slide it above. I'm going to move it over a little bit and just throw it in at a spot where she's not really talking. So you'll hear that in the conversation. She's going to pause and then you'll hear me say right.
One thing I've learned through all the work I've done over the years end up being like the crucial element in something that you end up doing.
Right.
So one is that I was the kid who always did very, very badly in language classes. End up being like the crucial element in something that you end up doing.
Right.
So one is that I was the kid who always did very, very badly in language classes. And so I never would have thought that I would, but as we have started working more and more with the deaf community, thanks to one of my research, but I've never been a great artist. And so as my daughters got older and started taking art classes, I did too. So I have been taking drawing and painting classes once a week at the studio by the end of all of us being home. So doing some sign language and then trying desperately at least once a day to sneak away for 50.
Now, this is a bit of a noisy, you can see we're both talking or laughing. Let's see what that sounds like, and we'll see if it sounds better if one of the parts needs to be removed.
15 to 20 minutes to do some drawing or painting.
Very, very fun.
Yeah.
Well, and you kind of led into my next question. That is,
Expect that our basement will become an art studio by the end.
Okay, that was awkward, and I'm sure it was because of the delay. You know, she started to speak, I was speaking at the same time. And so listening, I'm going to listen to that exchange one time. I think I'm probably going to delete everything here and just move into my next comment or question. So let's give that a listen.
End of all of us being home. So doing some sign language and then trying desperately at least once a day to sneak away for 15 to 20 minutes to do some drawing or painting.
very, very fun.
Yeah.
Well, and you kind of led into my next question. That is, you know.
Okay, a little bit awkward. So I can actually make that sound a bit better by, I say very, very fun. And then she says, yeah. So let's pull that over here, and there we go. So this is going to sound a bit better. A little bit more of a back and forth.
Desperately at least once a day to sneak away for 15 to 20 minutes to do some drawing or painting.
Very, very fun.
Yeah.
Well, and you kind of led into my next question. That is, you know, thinking outside of your work, what's another area of learning?
Taking drawing and painting classes once.
Now I'm actually changing my mind a bit. I'm going to go with my gut, my first response, which was just to get rid of that awkward exchange, and we will continue. So I don't know about that little sound there, but let's see what that sounds like.
Once a day to sneak away for 15 to 20 minutes to do some drawing or painting.
Well, and you kind of led into my next question. That is, you know, thinking outside of your, is that what you
Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thinking outside of your work, what's another area of learning for you, and what is it that really ignites your passions when you leave the campus? And it sounds like maybe that's it, the painting right now. Is that what you do?
Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, you're
Definitely.
a phenomenal achiever, Anne-Marie. Let's be frank.
Okay, now what happened there is that I had a question lined up about another passion or interest, but she kind of just covered that. My previous question was, what else is lighting your fire? And she talked about her painting. And then my next question was, what else are you doing? What other kinds of learning are you doing? And then that, she referred to the whole business of, she had already referred to the business of the painting. So that was kind of already covered. So what's going to happen here is I'm just going to cut out that whole section because that question was kind of wasted. And let's listen to that exchange one more time. Make sure that flows.
Desperately at least once a day to sneak away for 15 to 20 minutes to do some drawing or painting.
Well, you're a phenomenal achiever, Anne-Marie. Let's be frank. You have given numerous TED Talks and you're widely acclaimed in the area of work where you spend your time. So how do you get it all done? Can you share with us about perhaps a personal habit?
Okay, I did one of my long nervous swallows there. So I'm going to get that out of there. Let's let that roll from there. And this is her laughing when I asked the previous question, so that's all going to be deleted as well.
How do you get it all done? Can you share with us about perhaps a personal habit?
Oh, and there was an So I don't delete all of these, but since it's right at the cut line, that's an easy one. Listen to this.
Perhaps.
So we can get rid of that. Okay.
all done, can you share with us about perhaps a personal habit, a productivity hack, or an app or a routine that
Definitely.
You rely on a daily or regular basis?
So since I just did it, I'm getting on an roll. I'm going to cut that one out as well. Okay, and here's what that will sound like.
Or an app or a routine that
Definitely.
you rely on a daily or regular basis.
Okay, and let's find her answer.
It's true.
So again, this is out of sync because I did a lot of deleting on my track. So I'm going to hit Shift Delete or Shift Backspace on a PC. And now they are tight and synchronized once again.
You rely on a daily or regular basis.
You know, surrounding myself by people who are smarter and more productive than me has been helpful. I have to admit that I had a blush as you said those things. By people who are smarter and more productive than me has been helpful. I have to admit that I had a blush as you said those things, because as a teacher, our students look at us and really only see the successes. And so it's always something I have to really push with my engineering students is I was not that kid. I actually was the kid who got C's in school. I got many a C in grad and undergrad classes. I always said I was the kid who'd have to work twice as hard as everybody else to get the, it took more tries, it took more hours. And I think to this day, I'm still that way, that I tend to work best in collective, collaborative things. And so I think for me, there were a lot of lows in my college and graduate training where I probably came closer than I usually admit to giving in some way. Nobody's great at everything. And accepting that and accepting that it's okay to ask for help. And if you have a great idea, that doesn't mean you also have to be the one who does the website. 25 amazingly energetic and competent and just kind students who work. But one thing, and even as kindergartners as that sounds, and having a lot of compassion for people as they do their best trying to learn and work in a situation they've never been in before.
Phenomenal advice.
Now, I kept these little dips right here, but this is just furniture noise. So I'm actually going to delete that. Listen to this. You may not be able to hear that on the YouTube recording, but that's just her mouse or something, some furniture clicking around. So let's tighten that up and listen to this exchange here.
As they do their best trying to learn and work in a situation they've never been in before. And having a lot of compassion for people as they do their best trying to learn and work in a situation they've never been in before.
Phenomenal advice and inspiring your thinking today. So starting at Twitter, tell us about someone we should follow there and share why they've been inspiring you lately.
So there is a middle school science teacher at an all-girls school, and actually was Carolyn Little is a teacher who just brings so much joy and unexpectedness to how she teaches. At figuring out how to do sketch noting with her middle school science students in this remote situation.
Awesome. Point us to an ed tech tool that you currently love using somewhere in your professional practice.
I mean, I think me and every other educator on the planet right now has used Zoom for something. So we have to have a shout out to Zoom for keeping us all connected and seeing our students' faces.
You already dropped a couple of great book titles, but tell us about one that or maybe
connected and seeing our students' faces.
You already dropped a couple. They've been impactful.
So I'll go on one of each.
Maybe a couple of your all-time faves and why they've been impactful.
So I'll go on one of each. I always go back to Harry Potter. The book that I love reading that is not necessarily what I would use in a classroom at early elementary, but The Calculating Stars, which is part of the Lady Astronaut series by Mary Robinette Kowal, which is an amazing alternate history, looking at what if the space program had, from day one, had more...
With her? Okay.
Yes, yep. The space program had...
Now here I'm asking her for these rapid fire answers, and I come back with something short and it sounds just a little bit awkward. Let's play this and see if it's worth keeping.
and especially what if it had been happening during the civil rights movement. One of the most just jaw-dropping series I've ever read.
Phenomenal. That makes me think of some work by Jo Boaler. Are you familiar with her? Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Last two questions have to do with video content, and
Okay, kind of weird. I should not be asking guests about, putting them on the spot to, find out if they know about other researchers, but I was genuinely curious. I kind of had a gut sense that she would know Jo Boaler, so I'm going to go ahead and keep that. And let's just make sure that roll is okay, and then I'll cut that there. All right.
Jaw-dropping series I've ever read.
Phenomenal. That makes me think of some work by Jo Boaler. Are you familiar with her?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Last two questions have to do with video content, and I always think YouTube gets more valuable to either enjoy or find valuable.
So I love the incredible trove of resources on American Sign Language for students and teachers that is curated and led to teaching by Dr. Bill Vickers. So I use that a lot as I try to work on my sign language.
Last question is just for fun.
I use that a lot as I try to work on my sign language.
Now, I do this annoying mouth smack sometimes. I'll let you listen to it and then show you why I'm cutting it out.
Last question.
That's just annoying. So, and it does not sound nice in earbuds either. So let's listen to that exchange now.
As I try to work on my sign language.
Last question is just for fun. Anne-Marie, what are you watching on Netflix these days?
Well, I want to ask you the same thing after I answer. I will say I did just finish Academy, which is sort of apocalyptic sci-fi superheroes, which I did watch before all this happened, but I still think it's a fun watch. What are you watching?
What really works at the end of the day, we're finding a fun sweet spot, I guess. And I mentioned I have a 13-year-old and 15-year-old at home. So as a family, we usually end the day with the 1 or 2 episodes from The Office. We go back to the end of the day, we're finding a fun...
I kind of do that throat rumble annoying sound. Let's see if I can cut that out a little bit.
Of the day, we're finding a fun sweet spot. Sweet.
Let's make that cut better. I don't always do this, but if I can give that gift to the listener, I will. All right, let's see what that sounds like.
At the end of the day, we're finding a fun sweet spot, I guess. And I mentioned I have a
Sounds a lot better. Got that annoying throat sound out while I was thinking it over.
13-year-old and 15-year-old at home. So as a family, with the 1 or 2 episodes from The Office, we go back to the classic. And there's another series that I'm looking forward to called Ozark, but yeah, everyone's got a different list on Netflix. Everyone's got a different list on that I'm looking forward to called Ozark, but yeah, everyone's got a different list on Netflix, so it's fun to hear what other series that I'm looking forward to called Ozark, but yeah, everyone's got a different list on Netflix, so it's fun to hear what others that I'm looking forward to called Ozark, but yeah, everyone's got a different list on Netflix, so it's fun to hear what others are watching.
My daughters are raving. My daughters have 9 and 11 been raving about it.
We usually end the day with the 1 or 2 episodes from The Office. We go back to the classic, and there's another series that I'm looking forward to called Ozark, but yeah, everyone's got a different list on Netflix, so it's fun to hear what others are watching.
My daughters are raving. My daughters have 9 and 11 been raving about the Who Was series.
Now, notice right here I start talking at the same time that she does, so I'm going to be cutting that out. I'll delete that right now just to make sure that is gone. And let's pull her comment. right up tight to mine, and this is a tricky little exchange. I make some sounds and say some things I don't really like here, but that's okay.
Yeah, everyone's got a different list on Netflix, so it's fun to hear what others are watching.
My daughters have 9 and 11 been raving about the Who Was series. My daughters have 9 and 11 been raving about the Who Was series on Netflix, which takes the Who Was books, and each of those designed for kids episodes does 2 famous.
Okay, a couple annoying things happened right there. She restarts because I was talking over her, so I'm going to try to cut it right here. Let's see if I get that right.
So it's fun to hear what others are watching.
My daughters have 9 and 11 been raving about the Who Was series on Netflix, which takes the Who Was books, and each of those designed for kids episodes does 2 famous historical figures. So
very, very fun. Well, there's another series.
Oh, come on.
Series on Netflix, which takes the Who Was books, and each of those designed. My daughters have 9 and 11 been raving about the Who Was series on Netflix, which takes the Who Was books, and each of those designed for kids about the Who Was series on Netflix, which takes the Who Was books, and each of those designed for kids episodes does 2 famous historical figures.
Very, very fun. Well, and I mentioned off air too that we watched a little bit of
raving about the Who Was series on Netflix, which takes the Who Was.
Now I keep making that annoying throat sound, you know, and it makes me think of someone on the radio who does that. If I was feeling more picky, I could go through and take all of those out. But let's just roll it and see if it's survivable for the listener.
Books, and each of those designed for kids episodes does 2 famous historical figures.
Very, very fun. Well, and I mentioned off air too that we watched a little bit of Inside the Brain of Bill Gates, and for anyone interested in that backstory and kind of what he's into today, just a phenomenal watch as well. And Marie, for those interested in learning through play and all the work that you are involved in today, how can they reach out and connect with you?
Well, if you find me online, my website, as you mentioned, thomas.com, has my contact information. I truly invite you to reach out. I do to answer your emails and try to connect you to resources. These days, you can find me on the play line. That's probably the best way to find me.
All right, very good. Again, I want to thank you so much for sharing your time with the podcast today. I know your time is valuable and inspiring, and it's
probably the best way to find me.
All right, very good. Again, I want to thank you so much for sharing your time with the podcast today and open my eyes to a few things out there. I have a few links to check out after this interview, so take care and let's talk again soon.
Great, thank you so much.
All right, I'm hitting check out after this interview, so take care and let's talk again soon.
Great, thank you so much.
All right, I'm hitting...
Okay, so that is the end when she says...
Take care, and let's talk again soon.
Great, thank you so much.
So we're going to transition at this point into my shoutouts. And here is where I've already done some prepping. So a little bit of time has gone into a Google Doc, and I'll pull that up here. And I'm going to be shouting out some of the followers of the podcast. I'll be talking about the Teacher Blogs podcast, which I also produce. I'll be talking about the Teachers on Fire magazine. And I want to show you how I do that as well. So I'm going to pause the video and just open that Google Doc. All right, so I'm in the Google Doc, and this is what the guest sees. This is the doc that they are familiar with. It walks them through all of the questions that I have in the interview. And in this case, my guest didn't write anything here. She wrote a few things. You can see some of her answers here. And then she's so brilliant. She really didn't need to prep for this interview, I don't think, very much. She was ready to go. So I've already prepped everything below, everything highlighted in the purple. What I'm trying to do here is shout out, one person from Twitter, one tweet from Twitter that mentioned me, one response on Instagram, and if there are other responses on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, I want to mention those fans and followers as well. I have found, yes, this exercise, this part of it is really time consuming, but the reason I'm kind of stubbornly sticking to it is because it forces me to go back through the comments, through the feedback. And you know what? Every time I do, I find comments and tweets that I missed, that I did not like or retweet or respond to. And I'm so glad that I do go through and review. I think it's so important to acknowledge our fans. So I'm going to be recording directly into Adobe Audition. And I think what I will do to be safe here is I will start a new track, default stereo input. So I think I can do that right here. I'm going to hit the record button and hopefully we'll see the line start to move. We'll see some red, and that means the levels are ready to go. And default stereo input should point to the microphone I have in front of me. I'm just going to test it once. Let's see what happens. So I'm testing this out to make sure the levels are good. Let's see what that sounds like. So I'm testing this out to make sure the levels are good. Okay, that's decent quality. And one thing that I do want to attend to is I'm sitting here in a desk, kind of a desk cabinet area. Usually when I'm recording, I actually set up some pillow cushions around behind my computer and to the sides. And so when I come back, you're going to see things are a little darker. And the reason for that is that I need to muffle the sound as much as possible. Otherwise, the echo is too bad here in this cabinet. So I'm going to pause the video. And when I come back, the cushions will be sort of set up behind my computer, behind and around my computer. So I'm essentially speaking into a wall of 3 cushions. Okay, so as I get started here, you'll notice I'm a little bit darker, and maybe what I should do is to actually turn the lights in my room on. So I'll let I will go ahead and pause here. Okay, so I've turned the lights in the room on so that I'm a little bit better lit, because what I've done here is I've surrounded my computer again with pillows, with cushions, and that's blocking my desk lamp a little bit, so my face would have been quite dark. Still is. I'm kind of shrouded in shadow. That's okay. So here's where I start the shoutouts. Right now, my podcast episode is at 28 minutes, 56 seconds. But I've been adding these postscripts. Now, these postscripts take time, but again, as I explained earlier, in my mind, they are worth it. So let's hit the record button. And we are live. So I will come back and edit that out, but let's keep that rolling for now. Before we sign off today, I'd like to share some highlights from the Teachers on Fire Nation this week. Our first stop is on Twitter, where in response to episode 139, my Spark episode titled A Corona Lament Giving Shape to Our Struggle, Anik Roke at Anik Roke on Twitter tweeted, quote, "Appreciated how Tim put words for many feelings and realities right now. If you are having a hard time processing, I encourage you to listen to this," end quote. Thank you so much for listening and for taking the time to share that on Twitter, Anik. Anik is a fantastic teacher, blogger, and friend, and you'll find her content at anikroke.ca. She's a very faithful blogger there, and you will appreciate her stuff. I can promise you that. Next up on Instagram, in response to my post from @JamesClear about what you can do with 5 good minutes, Megan Churchill Brown at Megan C. Brown, E on the end of that, wrote, quote, 5 good minutes of psych with friends redeems a stressful day, end quote. And to that, I say absolutely. Thank you to Megan for introducing me to the game of Psych, another great game for mobile from the makers of Heads Up. Megan and I played Psych with some colleagues after school using our phones over Google Meet, and it was a lot of fun. Psych is a Teachers on Fire recommended way to unwind with your teammates at the end of a long week. And to all who have read, viewed, liked, retweeted, commented, or replied to my content on all the platforms where I share, thank you. You were the fuel to my fire, and I so appreciate your support. Make sure you drop by the Teachers on Fire magazine on Medium this week, where we featured pieces by Ali Hodge, Kelly Christopherson, Debbie Tannenbaum, Brad Davis, Caitlin Giordano, and Mark Horner. If you'd like to join our writing team, your first step is to create a Medium account using your Google credentials. Then message me at Teachers on Fire on any social media platform, and I'll make you a contributor for the publication. The rest is up to you. Speaking of blogging, make sure you check out the Teacher Blogs podcast. Recent episodes have included posts written and read aloud by Lynn Thomas, Brad Davis, and Debbie Tannenbaum. Well, I will leave you with this quote from my reading, Teachers on Fire. It's from a book called Hacking Assessment by Star Saxteen at MS Saxteen on Twitter. And she writes, quote, rigor doesn't necessarily have to do with the amount of work assigned, but rather the difficulty and intensity of the problem or project, end quote. And I really like that quote because lately, in fact, just today, I was having a conversation with friends on Voxer about this idea that it's really not about the quantity of work our learners complete, it's about the quality. That's what we need to be measuring and assessing as educators, and so that is something that should be governing our practices during the current quarantine and school shutdown during the remote learning era. We need to be looking not at quantity, but at quality. Again, I'm your host, Tim Cavey, and I'm so grateful that you decided to spend some of your day listening to this podcast. I hope that in some way the content you heard today from Dr. Anne-Marie Thomas ignited your thinking and inspired your practice. And I'll meet you next week right here on the Teachers on Fire podcast. Take care, stay safe, and have a great week. All right, so that is recorded, and now I'm going to hit stop there, and we're just going to review that quickly and edit out any mistakes. So this first piece is just where I'm talking before I switch tabs.
And we are live, so I will come back.
Okay, so let's find where I begin. And my levels actually look a little bit hot there, a little bit too high. I don't like that, but anyway, we'll give it a listen.
Before we sign off today, I'd like to share some highlights from the Teachers on Fire Nation this week. Our first stop is on Twitter, where in response to episode 139, my Spark episode titled A Corona Lament Giving Shape to Our Struggle, Anik Roke at Anik Roke on Twitter tweeted, if you are having a hard time processing, I encourage you to listen to this, end quote. Thank you so much for listening. Anik is a fantastic teacher, blogger, and friend, and you'll find her content at anikroke.ca. She's a very faithful blogger there, and you will appreciate her stuff. I can promise you that. Next up on Instagram, in response to my post from @JamesClear about what you can do with 5 redeems a stressful day, end quote. And to that, I say absolutely. Thank you to Megan for introducing me to the game. And to that, I say absolutely. Thank you to Megan for introducing stressful day, end quote. And to that, absolutely. And redeems a stressful day, end quote. And to that, I say absolutely. Thank you to
Now right here, I really don't like that the levels are maxing out again, and that might have to do with my inputs. I have trouble with my microphone on my new MacBook. Let's see what it looks like here. Yeah, that's higher. That's too bad. It's almost worth re-recording, but I think I'll give it a shot and see if this is okay. I'm just going to listen. I almost want to throw the headphones on, but if it's distorting at all, that's garbage.
Day, end quote. And to that, I say absolutely. Thank you to Megan for introducing me to the game of Psych, another great game for mobile from the makers of Heads Up. Megan and I like another great game for mobile from the makers of Heads Up. Megan and I played with some colleagues a game for mobile from the makers of Heads Up. Megan and I played Psych with some colleagues after school using our phones over Google Meet, and it was a lot of fun. Psych is a Teachers on Fire long week. And to all who have read, viewed, liked, retweeted, commented, or replied to my content on all the platforms where I share, thank you. You were the fuel to my fire, and I so appreciate your support. Make sure you drop by the Teachers on Fire magazine on Medium this week, where we featured pieces by Ali Hodge, Kelly Christopherson, Debbie Tannenbaum, Brad Davis, Caitlin Giordano, and Mark Horner. If you'd like to join our writing team, your first step is to create a Medium, then message me at Teachers on Fire on any social media platform, and I'll make you a contributor for the publication. The rest is up to you. Speaking of blogging, make sure you check out the included posts written and read aloud by Lynn Thomas, Brad Davis, and Debbie Tannenbaum. Well, I will leave you with this quote from my reading teachers on fire. It's from a book called
Just going to
Hacknessment
tighten
by
that up a bit.
Miss Brad Davis and Debbie Tannenbaum. Well, I will leave you with this quote from my reading teachers on fire. It's from a book called Hacking Assessment by Star Sack, to do with the amount of about the quality. That's what we need to be. Host Tim Cavey, and I'm so grateful that you take care, stay safe, and have a great week. All right, so that is recorded, and now I'm going to hit stop on Fire Podcast. Take care, stay safe, and have a great week.
Now, so we're getting close to the end. What I have been doing lately in the last few episodes is I like to back up to the point in the conversation where I ask my guest about her contact information. There's my voice. And that's when I start to fade in some music. So let's figure out where, whoa, I'm scrolling really fast here. Okay, I think it's about there. Let's give it a listen.
Very, very fun. Well, and I mentioned off air too that we watched a little bit of Inside the Brain of Bill Gates and a little bit of Inside the Brain of Bill
That's so irritating. I might...
Gates. And for anyone interested in that backstory and kind of what he's into today, just a phenomenal watch as well. And Marie, for those interested in learning through play and all...
That is where I ask her for her contact information. So let's bring in our second music track. And from here on, I'm going to play some background music. So, song tracks from YouTube. Let's go with Anthem. And again, if you're a regular listener of the show, you'll recognize these tracks. Nope. Let's try that again. Okay. And we're just going to fade this in. Oops. Okay. Here we go. Now you can see up here at the top, I can see this track will not reach the end of my clip, so I'm going to have to add one more track. That's okay.
Phenomenal watch as well. And Marie, for those interested in learning through play and all the work that you are involved in today, how can they reach out and connect with you?
Well, if you find me online, my website, as you mentioned, annemarie-thomas.com, has my contact information. I truly invite you to reach out. I'd be happy to answer your emails and try to connect you to resources. These days, you can find me.
With the podcast today, I know your time is valuable. This has been fun.
So let's skip ahead to where that clip runs out. And if you're wondering where the other audio is, it's down here. That's where I just recorded the postscript, the shoutouts. So let's add one more audio track. There's another good track that I like called Species. I'll throw that on there as well with a bit of an overlap. Let's see what that sounds like. So there's a bit of a fade out and a fade in happening here.
Google credentials. Then message me at Teachers on Fire on any social media platform, and I'll make you a contributor for the publication. The rest is up to you. Speaking of blogging, make sure you check out the teacher.
Now all I need to do is go to the end and just fade the music out appropriately. So here is the end of my speaking.
Take care, stay safe, and have a great week.
It's a good place to cut. And we'll fade that out. So I'll just grab this fader. And that's going to fade out nicely. Okay, all the audio is in pretty good shape. Something I do that I haven't shown you yet is... kind of sounds funny. Something I do with the audio tracks, and maybe I'll do with all 3 tracks. You know, I don't think I've ever done this all at once. Let's see if I can do this. So track effects. I have never done this all at once, but why not? So I've heard that the de-esser is a good one to apply. I've heard that noise reduction, the adaptive noise reduction is good, high quality. I'll be honest, I don't really know how, there's click remover. I don't really know how effective these are or how much they make a difference, but I would say going back quite a ways in my recording career here, which is about 2 years old, I think there were some conversations that did clean up quite a bit. The other, they cleaned up quite a bit by using these controls. I'm getting a bit tired here, so apologies. What else do I have left? I also want to, here's where I'm going to hit Control A again and Match Clip Loudness at -19. Let's see if these waveforms change at all. Now, unfortunately, even though the volume gets tweaked downward a little bit on the track that I just recorded, you'll remember I was a little bit too, whoops. You remember I was a little bit too hot. Oh, I see what I'm doing there. Okay. So it's not going to help too much, but let's see what it sounds like here.
Before we sign off today, I'd like to share some highlights from the Teachers on Fire Nation this week.
It's not too bad. It's not the purest sound, but it's on me. I just need to make sure to watch that input level very carefully. And again, I'm talking about on my MacBook. For whatever reason, when I use this mic, it needs to be even below a quarter, like even around 18%. Otherwise, it's just too loud. I don't know why. Something's wrong there. Okay, so what I usually do before I export this file, and I know for some of you this will be super painful, but I hit this button to put it all in one window, and I need to unselect files, and I give it a quick once over just to make sure there were no glaring mistakes. So a mistake visually would look like this, if there was a gap top and bottom and no sound. So I've listened to podcasts before where there was a mistake made like that, and that's a big no-no. You don't ever want a gap in the audio. And, you know, other things that I look for, if I laugh or chuckle and I kept that in, I don't want that to be too loud, that in a way that sort of drowns out the guest. So let's just skip across really quick. This will only take a minute.
.com. Anne-Marie, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Are you ready to talk about learning?
Absolutely.
Why don't you start by telling us a little bit more to AMPTMN and visit her website at annemarie-thomas.com. Anne-Marie, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Are you ready to talk about learning?
Absolutely.
Why don't you start by telling us a little bit more about your current context in education? I shared a pretty diverse portfolio right there, and I'm sure there's...
Absolutely.
Why don't you start by telling us a little bit more?
Now, the reason I made that change is I heard that little piece right there got leveled up, and my chuckle was way too loud. It didn't need to be that loud. So all of this looks good. I don't see any little spots that I need to attend to. Everything looks synced pretty well. It's all pretty tight. Now here there's a sliver from her. Let's just see what that sounds like. Make sure the levels are right.
Improving PR or sales, I really get the quote. Again, congratulations. Phenomenal.
Thank you so much.
Phenomenal outcome for you and for your... And my hat goes off.
And let's listen to this one as well.
Especially who have 3 or 4 little people at home. I mean, they've got double duty in the fit goal or maybe
or seem tangential. Shockingly,
let's see what this little sliver from me sounds like.
Something that you end up doing.
Right.
So one is that I was the kid who always did very
that one is just a little bit too loud, so I'm going to cut that down. Let's make that about half.
Foreign language classes in school. I've got some auditory problems, so
and let's check out this sliver here.
You know, surrounding myself by people who are smarter and more productive than me has been helpful. I have to admit that I had a blush as you said those things because as a teacher,
she's so good.
Really only see which I did.
See, my laugh gets leveled up a little bit. That's one danger of the Match Clip Loudness. So I just want to bring that back down a touch.
Which I did watch before all this happened.
It's not terrible. It's just not super. It sounds a bit weird.
And each of those designed for kids after 11 have been raving about the Who Was series on Netflix, which takes the Who Was books, and each of those designed for kids episodes does 2 famous historical figures.
Very, very fun. Well, and I mentioned off air too that we watched a little bit of interviews, so take care and let's talk again soon.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, if you are still watching, I applaud you. That's amazing. So I am now at the place where I'm going to save this content and I'm going to export entire session. And remember, I need to select the right folder again, and I've gotten into the habit of just calling this full episode. Really doesn't matter too much, but full episode signals for me this file is good to go. Notice it's now going to export in MP3 format. And I'm happy with the length of this episode actually. It's quite short. It's only 28 minutes long. I have a couple of other stops to make while this is exporting, and these will take me a few minutes. I need to open up Canva, and while that's exporting, I'll show you what this looks like, what I do here. I'm going to make an episode cover, which is going to look different than the YouTube cover. This is my last episode, so I'm always just working from the last one. This episode is going to be 142, and I need my guest's face. And I also obviously need her name, and I'm going to change the background. So this is Dr. Anne Marie Thomas. And because her name is a little larger, I may have to downscale the size a little bit. Wow, my computer is really working hard right now. I think it's because I'm recording and exporting all at the same time. Okay, a conversation with Dr. Anne Marie Thomas. This background image I'm going to replace. And I usually just hop on Google. I can usually find good images of my guests right here. And if that doesn't work, I can always go to Twitter and so forth. Some good choices here. This one I've noticed, I think this is from her website. Let's take a moment to go to her website. I think that is her promotional image. And if that is the case, that makes it easy for me, right? Dr. Anne Marie Thomas.com. Okay. That photo's not bad, but I've been in the habit of removing background from photos. And so let's see if we can find one that is a little easier to remove the background from. This one is a possibility. Go away. All right. How do I close? Okay. I don't know if you can hear my computer working, but it is struggling hard. Okay, that's a nice picture, but let's see how it shows up when I remove the background. So let's back up, put that in pictures, teachers on fire, interviewee pics, and I'll call this 142. Dr. Anne Marie Thomas. So that's picture one, and watch this. Actually, I'll keep that window open in case I need to go back for more images. Yes, I could ask my guests for a promotional image. I should make that part of my systems. Old habits die hard. Now, it probably won't work. Well, those lights are a little funny, but it might be kind of a cool thing. So I'll call this Dr. Anne Marie Thomas 2. And notice it's now a PNG. And let's see what that looks like on Canva. So I'm going to upload. Now, if I can find a background image with lights, that might actually turn out really well. I should take a look at where this image is from to make sure I'm not... It's from Make Magazine. Would they be unhappy with me using this? A photo by Mike Eckern, University of St. Thomas, which is where she works. So it's put out by her university. They probably won't mind, but maybe I will put an attribution on here. So I will copy this attribution just to make sure everything's golden there. And let's insert some text right here. Okay, we're going to have to make that very small. Sorry, Mike Eckern. And that actually just fits in, but no, it doesn't. So make that 5. Let's see if that works. Okay, so the attribution is there. I don't always do that, but yeah, want to make sure that is all good, all cool. Now, her face is a little bit lower than I would like, again, because her name is pushing out here. So one way to fix that would be to move this up and then move this down. And, you know, a lot of this is personal taste. My friend Joshua Stamper always has beautiful stuff on his podcast that would, you know, put me to shame. Now, okay, that looks cool. I'm gonna have to make that attribution even smaller. I don't like doing that, but at least it's there, you know, so that if someone is interested, they can either read it or they can ask me about it, and I can tell them where I got the image and source it properly. Okay. And these words applied to my last guest, so I have to do some thinking about, you know, what were the three themes. For now, I'll put play, learning, and innovation. And I can look back through the notes of our conversation and make sure there was nothing else that I'm really missing. Big themes: playful learning, Lego, something to always check out as well. Yeah, here are some of play, learning. It's all about her, you know, her thing really is all about play and learning, making makers. Oh, let's make sure. Okay, this is her book. Yes. So when I make a larger thumbnail, like the YouTube clip, I will try to include this book. Give her a bit of a shout out there. So I've got a few themes here: play, learning, making, and Lego. Lego is important because she won a $100,000 Lego prize. Maybe what we can do, let's put play, learning, and making, and then we'll have a big, we'll have some Lego in the background. That might really bring this all together. So for quality images, I go to Unsplash. That one's funny. Ooh, that's good. I want it to be really clear that it is Lego. That picture right there is really good. You can kind of see the boy, playing with some Lego. Wow, there are a lot of good options here. And there. I might, let's see. That one's really good. If I add children to the filter, let's see what I come up with. Yeah, that one again. So what I'm looking for is something that really symbolizes what she's all about. I would love to see a little bit more of a close-up of Lego, if possible. Okay, we're starting to get more children pictures and no Lego. I think this one may be the best. So I'm going to save this, and then let's see what it looks like as a background. I'll just call this Lego so that I can find it. Okay, and let's pull that into the episode cover. I'm going to try to position it in a way where it doesn't distract too much from what's happening here. Whoops. I don't actually want to do that yet. This is going to be tricky. Nope, don't like that position. Okay, let's see what happens here. Let's flip that horizontally. That's not bad. That would be perfect right there if I can kind of hold that position. Now, if you don't size it like this, Canva will sort of grab it and just put it where it wants to. Okay, and then it's going to be tricky here to see if I can get the fading right, because we want to be able to see the Lego but not distort the words too much. And right now we have black on black, and I lost my chance to move the black Lego piece. Dang. Okay, let's see what this looks like. That's not bad. I'm kind of happy with that. The black font here is sort of, in fact, I can drag that down a little bit. I don't want the black font obviously on the black Lego piece, right? That's kind of my main concern. Right now I'm keeping it lined up with the logo. Logo and Lego. Conversation with Dr. Anne-Marie Thomas. She looks nice. She's kind of looking at the Lego piece. I like this. Play, learning, and making. Nice. Okay. I think I'm happy with that. And now this is just for the podcast episode cover. And a lot of podcasters don't even bother with this step at all. They just go with their logo, which is fine. But some of the podcast players, like Spotify, will include the unique episode cover. And I think that's really valuable. It helps people sort of visually track your show. And so for that reason, I've started doing this. So 142, Dr. Anne Marie Thomas. Okay, I'm happy with that. One more step before I publish is I need to make sure the episode description is all set up. So you don't need to see all that. So let's see here. I need to make a copy. And I'll show you how I put this together. This is just going to be some quick show notes. This is not enough for the website. On the website, I want to eventually, I'm a little behind there right now, but I eventually like to do a full write-up of the conversation. This is just what users will see in their show notes on their mobile app. So this is Dr. Anne Marie Thomas. And I said play, learning, and making. Play, learning, and making. Okay, so let's change the header. Dr. Anne Marie Thomas. Play, learning, and making. Those are going to be the, the three themes that I use to promote the episode. And then most of this is boilerplate, but I do want some accurate information here about who my guest is. So I'm going to borrow most of that information from this right here, which is the way I introduce her in the episode. Okay, so we're going to drop that in there. Let's do a little bit of editing. Dr. Anne Marie Thomas is the director, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Oh, and she does not want to be called Anne, always Anne Marie. So make sure to get that right. And we will, this is going to be Anne Marie. Now, some of this MPT MN from Minnesota. Some of this, do I need to put the handle and the URL? Probably not. But depending on the different, I'm keeping in mind that this podcast and the show notes will show up on 12 different podcast players and platforms. And on some of those players and platforms, these links are clickable and some are not. And so I've just, my conclusion has been, for some, they just want to see the handle so they can type it in. And for others, they actually want a clickable URL if that is a possibility. Now let's see if did she give me an Instagram account? Sometimes I'll go and take a look on Instagram and see, yeah, she is there, but, oh, and she actually did hyperlink it. Very nice. Thank you. And I'm not following her, so let's make sure to do that. Okay, so I'm going to copy that URL, go back to my episode description. We'll drop the URL right there. Just double check those. And change this to Anne Marie P. Now I will, yeah, you know what? Let's make sure we include her website in the episode description. I'll have more of these links and follow opportunities on the, like I said, on my website, show notes at teachersonfire.net. But for now, I want to make sure the basics are listed here in the show notes. Like I said, these show up on mobile apps wherever people are listening to podcasts. So we've got her Twitter, her Instagram, her website, and you know what? She's published a book as well. So what I'm going to do here, I don't have an Amazon affiliate link right now, which is totally fine. We can actually drop this as well. That would be, she actually had so many resources. Like there's the Playful Learning Lab. 4 different Twitter accounts. I might include all of those in the website, but I don't think I'll include all of them in the episode show notes. I'll just say at her book. That's a little bit awkward, but. And what's the name of her book? Okay, let's italicize that. And then we will give, now that Amazon link is ridiculously long. So actually it's not brutal, but what we need to do, it's still too long. So what we need to do is go to bit.ly and shorten that up a little bit. So I'm going to drop that in there, shorten, and whoops, yes, thank you. Copy and episode. Now, very exciting. I think I'm ready to take you to Anchor. What am I at here? 1:45. Let's get this published inside 2 hours. Okay, so looking at my intro, just the bare bones episode description. She's also the 2020 recipient of. I'm going to add one detail here that I came across late into the, just before our conversation. Given a number of TED Talks and is the recipient.
It's 8 o'clock.
Or I'll say was the recipient of the 2020 recipient of the International Lego Prize. Okay, this is redundant. I'll take that out. And I think this looks good. Now let's make sure these were those were exactly the song tracks that I used in the episode. We are ready to go to Anchor. Very exciting. So if we could jump back to Audition, that's long exported. That's all done. I should be able to close this. It won't complain. Good. Let's go into Anchor. And you see some play numbers there. This number here makes me sad. It has been a lot higher, but taken a beating lately. And you can see, since you've already seen those plays, you can see kind of where my plays are lately. They're in the, there's 800, 800. But most of these are, in the first week or two that they've been out there in the 500-600. So this is during the COVID-19 crisis. And, I think some of this has to do with the fact that a lot of people are not commuting anymore. These are some of my highs. So I've got quite a good number. I would say about 24 episodes now, over 1,000 plays. And my very top one at this time, Nancy Fry, 1255. Jonathan Alsheimer now in second place. That's cool. That's fun. So let's publish a new episode. Click to upload. And I'm going too quickly because some of you are not familiar with. Okay. Apparently I can't close this window. Oh, I can cancel. In my library, I get access to a whole bunch of, any pieces, previous recordings I've done. I can access all of that stuff, but I don't need to right now. Instead, I'm going to upload. Tim KV audio files, Teachers on Fire, and Dr. Anne-Marie Thomas. And I should see full episode. That is my exported, finalized file. And I'm sorry, I should have done this earlier while I was in Canva and updating the episode description. So I think what I will do right now is maybe pause my recording and we'll come back once this has fully uploaded and processed. And you can see it actually doesn't take too long to do. So, oh wow, that's moving really quick. Let's just close some windows that I don't need here. So remember, Unsplash, great source for high quality public domain pictures. Ooh, that one, yeah, that one's really good. Another good possibility. But I like my episode cover right now. I think it's going to work. Remove.bg, another great source. Her website, Canva. I'm pretty proud of that episode cover. I like that. Amazon, we've got her Instagram. And of course, sometimes, is that all? Okay, while that just finishes processing, let's take a look for her YouTube channel. I usually index this on my spreadsheet, which I haven't really shown you here, but Anne-Marie Thomas. Let's just see what's available. Now here are some of her TED Talks. Here is her channel, and I like to always subscribe to my guest channel. Let's see, 2 days ago. So she is posting stuff. Oh, the rest of it is 2 months. So this clip is actually a very recent clip. And she might want me, the reason I'm interested in this is she might actually want me to...
Hello and welcome to the Playful Learning Lab. The Playful Learning Lab is a...
She might actually want me to promote this channel. So I might actually add this to the episode description. Does that make sense? She's put in the work to develop her channel a little bit. Let's do that. On her YouTube channel and let's drop that URL. Good. That's something else I always like to check as well. If she's trying to do something or build something there, it looks like she is. I want to do my part to help her. And hey, if someone discovers her channel that way, that's great. So this clip has fully processed. You're getting an inside look into Anchor, the Anchor publishing headquarters, whatever you want to call this. So let's grab all of this text starting at the bottom of that section, and we'll drop it in here. And let's make sure I don't want all of that bolded. Okay, and we will grab the header, or part of the header. This is my episode title. Play, learning, and making. Playing, learning, and making. That makes more sense. That makes more sense. So, okay, quick tweak here. Why not have 3 progressive verbs, right? Playing, learning, and making. You know what that means? We have to make one more change on Canva. Bear with me, this will be quick. I should have noticed this earlier. I am, English and wordsmithing is a pleasure for sure. But playing, learning, and making. Oh, some people are going to love that. I certainly do. I've got a writer right now, teacher Tom Hodgson, who's been writing a lot about this topic. So this is now Dr. Anne-Marie Thomas 2. This is the second iteration of this episode cover. Okay, so that downloaded, and let's get that into Anchor. So we're going to push that out right here. The new episode cover, second one. Playing, learning, and making. Good. Season 1. Everything is one of the first season, even though I'm now 2 years into this. Episode 142. I think this is good. Final check. Follow Anne-Marie at all these places. Visit me. Follow me. Connect here. And credits for the songs. Now, a lot more information will go on the website later. And I have some serious catching up to do. But as soon as I hit publish, this track will appear on Spotify usually. It's a race between Spotify and Apple. Usually those clips appear within minutes. But Teachers on Fire, EduPodcasters, you just watched my editing and publication of a podcast episode from start to finish. I don't think anyone's going to watch all this, but you can certainly skip through different parts of the video. I hope this was interesting or helpful. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. And if I'm doing some really dumb things, Jeff Bradbury, I know you will let me know. Jeff Bradbury is my podcasting friend over there at TeacherCast, and he has about 9 podcasts on the go. So he's always encouraging me to speed up my process, but there is my current routine, and that's what it looks like. Just before I sign off, let's open Spotify, and it's very unlikely that my podcast has shown up already, but let's just see if it has. Where am I here? Browse podcasts. Does it not know who I am? Why is it not showing me any of my stuff? There we go. Oh, I saw it for a second. Teachers on Fire. It's probably not here yet. No, it's not here yet, but I promise it'll be here very, very shortly. And once it appears, I use these share options down here to put it on my Instagram stories, or that might be just for mobile. Let's see. At any rate, I'm going to stop there. Let's see if anyone's listened to the episode already. Probably not, because it's not on any platforms yet. Yeah, probably not. Definitely not. It's still 0. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. That was fun. Yeah, like I said, let me know if you've got some tips. I'd love to hear back from you.